Hi, and welcome to the Ready to Shine Summit, where you will learn how you can successfully navigate your career with more ease, purpose, and confidence. I'm your host, Loree Phillips. I'm excited to introduce our next expert speaker. Elizabeth Dr. E. Carter, PhD, founded her company, APEAL, in 2016, embodied in her absolute passion for performance, engagement, analytics, and leadership. She elevates corporate professionals from uncertainty and confusion to experience increased recognition, confidence, and fulfillment in their careers. Elizabeth is also a speaker, trainer, coach, 7-time best-selling author, founder of the Elevate Your Value Summit and the Corporate Sisters Network. Welcome to the summit, Dr. E.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me, Lori. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. And I'm so excited to dive into our topic today. And we're going to be talking about as we navigate our careers, it is almost inevitable that there will be something that stops us in our tracks, whether it's a corporate shakeup, a change in position suddenly, a layoff. There's so many things, a new manager that maybe you're not super excited about, whatever it is, it's bound to happen. And so we're going to talk about today how we can better prepare ourselves for when something happens and stay resilient through the process. So I'm going to kick it off and let's talk about why is it important for us to first just acknowledge that these things happen and start to make sure that we're prepared.
Yes, thank you so much. As you mentioned, the only thing constant is change.
Mhm.
And we always think that we have everything planned. We have our life in order. We know exactly what we're doing at work. We think we have it all figured out. And as you mentioned, something blindsides us. And it's so important that we stay ready to be nimble and to be flexible to shift no matter what goes on. Because if we're not, we become in a reactive mode and not being proactive. And reactive makes us make decisions that are probably not the best ones, not the most appropriate ones, not the ones that really will fulfill us in the future. So it really is, how do we remain proactive, but still live our day to day and be excited about what we're doing and where we're going, but always have the mindset that at any moment life could change.
Mm. It's so important, and it's very easy for us to get caught up in the here and the now and the day-to-day to-do lists and responsibilities and goals that we have for ourselves to not take that extra time to be prepared. So what are some of the things, Dr. E, that you recommend for us to take some time to start to either to do, to prepare, to better position ourselves to be flexible when things come up?
So it really is about time management. And for me, I was a caregiver for both my mother directly and my father basically indirectly. And what seems to happen is that life will prioritize itself for you. So you really have to make sure that you prioritize what's really important, what really needs to get done today, what can realistically wait, what can be outsourced, whether you're delegating it to another member of your family or at work delegating it to some other portion of your staff. And realistically think about, is what I'm doing aligned to my purpose, my position, and my priorities? Because
Mhm.
when life happens, you have to ultimately free yourself up to address what that is in front of you. So it really is about, and I don't call it balance, I call it harmony
Mhm.
between life, work, business, and always provide yourself a little bit of time to just breathe. We don't breathe. We are constantly on the go, 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 serving others, never ourselves. But always just step back to take time for yourself. Maybe read a good book, get in the car and just drive, take a vacation without your laptop and turn off your phone. I know it's difficult, but those moments where you're able to breathe and just reflect, allows you to really become clearer on what's important. And that allows you to be able to really create that harmony in your life and prioritize what's important at the time.
Mm. I love this. I mean, it's already important for us to take this time for ourselves. And you're right. I fall to the bottom of my to-do list and then it gets pushed off to the next day. And when we don't make ourselves a priority, we don't take the time and the space to do all those important things that you mentioned, like breathing. But I like this idea also in terms of the discussion that we're having because it's almost like we get to practice having the space to think about what's important so that when a shift happens and you're all of a sudden in this kind of a stressful state, you can lean into those habits that you've created when things weren't so crazy, right? And even though if maybe you feel like your work is crazy, but it's bound to have moments of even more uncertainty. And so when we get into those moments, we can be lean into those habits that we've created. And so I love that one. So we have our focus on our priorities. What's next? What is the next thing that we can take a look at doing?
Well, the other component around life is that there were longer moments when we had more time to ourselves. I think the job has become more of a 24/7. We're now all this technology. We can IM people at 11 o'clock at night with a question if we wanted to, or 5 a.m. in the morning. We haven't gotten big on setting boundaries to say, I will put my phone on silent from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. When we set those boundaries and let people know there are boundaries, that's also very helpful. And because once you allow people into those spaces beyond the boundaries, they think it's okay.
Mhm.
Then it becomes a burden on you, not them. So once we understand where our priorities are, set some boundaries around when you will and will not do something and hold firm. Again, because once you start to let things slip through, then you've lost control of your day. So what I try to do, even though I'm still very bad at that, is put the phone away at night. When I wake up, even though my alarm clock's on the phone, don't immediately go to email to see what happened overnight. It can wait until you've done your morning routine, exercise, yoga, affirmation, whatever it is you do in the morning, and pick a certain point in time to say, here's when I will start my day. Here's when I will start to lean into whatever's happened in email, social media, at work, at home. This way, you are at peace until that point in time. So, boundaries is another great thing to do.
Yes, and it's so much easier said than done,
Yes.
and I understand that as much as it looks like you understand that, but part of it is about having the confidence to set firm in that you are part of your priorities.
Mm.
And that you're gonna take whatever that end of the day to the beginning of the morning time for yourself, your family, your interests, your personal life, whatever it is that you love to do outside of the work environment.
Mhm.
And so when you take a stand on that, you're also modeling it for others and leading the charge around it's acceptable for your team to also set their boundaries, and then you can show up during that time of that you've decided I'm gonna work during this time in a more powerful, well-rested way. And so I love this tip, Doctor E, and I do also sleep with my phone next to me. And I was thinking about it yesterday and I thought, okay, I'm gonna take this phone and I'm gonna plug it in the other room, and then I didn't do it. And so I'm gonna try again tonight because it's like, get it a little bit further because even when I woke up, I'm just it's a habit to
Yes,
check it. And if it's a little bit further away, maybe you won't.
that's right.
Mhm. So I'm curious about now that we have a little bit more space, we understand our priorities a little bit better, we're really drawing a line in the sand of this is my time. How do we shift in our mindset into being more flexible and being open to change?
I think it really is just leaning in and doing something different. So, for example, what I did recently, I lost both my parents back in 2023, and had a bit of a, I will say, a lull or a loss, but I had some space because I was giving all of my efforts to them. And I said, well, what can I do that is for me? And I started taking ballroom dancing lessons. And I love it because it was just perfect timing. It's something new. I'm learning these different dance routines and steps, and I'm figuring out I'm not as flexible as I used to be in my older age here. And it gives me something different to do. It's a commitment. I am scheduled to be at the studio whatever time we've arranged for my lesson, and that becomes my time. I find two things. If you have it on your calendar to do, you'll do it. And if you've made an investment into doing it, you will do it. So I love to be able to be involved in investing in myself through an activity like that, and always personal development. I have several different trainings I am working on right now. I have several different coaches I work with. So that takes me out of my comfort zone. It gets me in front of new people, and you never know who you'll meet in that external environment that may be able to help you or you help them. So I find that even though I've reshifted what's important to me, I'm still very committed, and now I feel invigorated. I'm excited. People say, "Hey, you're glowing. What's going on differently?" And that's what you really want, is just to lean into things that are new and different, that bring you interest and excitement.
Mm. Yeah, I was just talking with a former professor who's really into the brain science of how chemicals released in your brain. And one of the things she mentioned was this idea of variety and choosing to do things that you want to do and a variety of things. And it just keeps that kind of excited, interested energy. And you look like you're glowing, and I love that so much about you and the energy you're bringing, but we can cultivate that for ourselves. And when we look at something that's we start to get used to trying new things when something changes, we can lean in a bit on, I know how to shift. I know how to learn something new. I know how to take on a different responsibility. I've done it before. I can do it now. And there's likely a whole list of things you're going to learn and grow from the process, especially because it's uncomfortable. And that's where the growth is that I found in my life. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Dr. E. Is that similar to what you've experienced?
Yes, absolutely. They say that there is no growth in the comfort zone. They say the comfort zone is the danger zone because you do start to become complacent. I would say a little bit at ease. I'll lean into a little bit of lazy. When you start to step out, and this is the resilience piece, and it really comes from working. So, as we are very nimble and flexible in the work environment, the same needs to go for everything else we do. The fact that I was able to lean in and walk into a dance studio and it said no partner needed, I had no idea about who it was, what I was going to do. But that came from me always being that way in corporate, always in most cases being the only female,
Mhm.
the only African American, the only whatever it is. But you just have to walk in and do it. And then once you're involved and engaged, people start to see who you are. They appreciate what you bring to the table, and you find your own way and you utilize your uniqueness. So it's the same thing where I created for myself this little bit of sense of no fear or what's the worst that could happen. The worst that can happen is that I hate it and then I quit. Same thing on the job. So I take that same sense of fear and failure with me because if I don't try, I don't know if I'll enjoy it or not. So just go ahead and do it. And if I don't, I just say, hey, thank you so much. I won't be coming back and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, there is, I think, this false assumption we make that we don't have control over our careers, or that in terms of deciding, is this for me anymore? Do I enjoy doing this? And really reflecting for ourselves, well, if the answer is no, I can decide to leave. I can decide to shift. It's not the end of the world. Although it, especially for those of us, and I was at the same company for 16 years. For those of us that have been at the same place for a long time, it can feel that way because we're just so comfortable with it. But, at the end of the day, it's our life, our career, and we get to be the chooser and decide, is this for me? Is this not for me? And I love the adventure of what you're talking about. Like, we can look at the same thing with two different set of eyes and have a completely different experience of it. So
Right.
if you come in and looking at something like an opportunity, or looking at it as a challenge that you're ready to solve, or looking at it as, oh, maybe there's something here I'm going to learn about myself that I didn't know before. It's just a different way to lean into that particular change or that particular position that we can leverage for ourselves. So we talked about resiliency. Do you have any other thoughts around the topic of resiliency? Because I think it's one of those things that's inevitable in life, similar to change, is that if you're striving to do something outside of your comfort zone, something important to you, taking on a challenge, the likelihood that you will have a setback, a failure, a misstep, you're not going to be perfect at it right out of the gate, especially if it's something new, is very, very high. How do we brush ourselves off, pick ourselves back up, and step forward after we hit those types of setbacks?
So it's always about who do you have surrounding you? I call it your personal board of advisors. Those would be mentors, coaches, especially those who are already in the space that you want to move into, especially if it's brand new. Having conversations with them for them to enlighten you around what would be some of the pitfalls. What are some things to look out for? They are very willing to share with you what happened to them and how they had to be resilient and overcome challenges to get to where they are. So it really is great to talk with people who have been there, done that, have the bruises, and can share
Mhm.
their story so that you can be aware of situations as they're starting to arise before they start to become a major challenge so that your resilience will be different than their resilience.
Mhm.
But knowledge is power. And there are so many people who are trying to do things alone. Why?
Yeah.
There are plenty of people out there who are very willing to help you because they know how hard it was. Who wouldn't want somebody to struggle the way they did? That's crazy. So there are so many people out there who are willing and able to share to help others because we know there's plenty for everyone. We all can thrive and be successful. So it really is having people around you who can really assist you, understand where the gaps are, and allow you to learn and grow faster. That's what I'm big on. Please learn and grow and move faster than I did. I don't want anybody to struggle the way I did. So I'm happy to talk to you about anything and everything pertaining to how to maneuver in corporate America.
Yeah, yeah, the support network is such a pivotal piece of the conversation. For anybody, I was speaking with a CEO a couple months ago who she embarked on launching a book, her first book. And so this was different for her. And there was a bit of vulnerability in that. And she was promoting it on social media. And her husband got a text from somebody who basically was like it was too much, that she needed to cut back what she was doing. And so that kind of imposter syndrome came up, that little bit of like, "Ooh, this isn't feel good." And the one thing she did is exactly what you're talking about, is she leaned on her network and she reached out to her people. And like that, she got that dose of support. Like, what are you talking about? Keep going. I'm buying your book right now. Like, let the naysayers go into their corner and complain to themselves. And But you're right as far as I don't know if it's just something that we do as women more, but we like to do things on our own. We love to support others, but for some reason we feel like we need to navigate things. We don't like to ask for help. We don't like to ask for support. And the support is there if you ask for it. And I always encourage people to not only ask for support, but also be there for others. It's like it's a two-way street,
Absolutely.
especially when you get to the levels, the higher levels, be that person that's in support of those coming up from behind you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, as we continue this conversation about change, resiliency, being prepared, what have we missed in this conversation, Dr. E, that you feel like is a key nugget for people to hear?
Well, I think the major component, again, as we are serving everyone else but ourselves, we miss certain clues that would allow us to be proactive, to understand that there may be change in the future. For example, for me back in 2016, I was working my corporate job, working hard, raising my hand on 24/7. You could call me at 5 a.m., 12 midnight. I'd answer your call or question. And I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing to get ahead. But what I
Mhm.
was missing was, first of all, we had been acquired by a new parent company, and there's always changes in that reorganization, shuffling of leadership. And I was fine with all that. I was welcoming everyone who was coming in with open arms, offering my assistance. What could I do to help make the transition smoother? But at the same time, they were starting to shed people and positions. And I thought I was invincible. That will never happen to me. They need me. I do so much here. How could they could never get rid of me?
Yep.
And I missed all the clues. And the funny thing is that I'm in finance and I built the budget. I built into the budget 5 people to be laid off in June of 2017. Come to find out in February of 2017, I was one of the 5.
Mm.
So I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. And I was not ready. I did not have a plan thinking that I might have been one of those persons on that list. I felt I would be there till whatever they were finishing doing as far as this merger acquisition, I'd be there, be there to the end. So I didn't necessarily have a plan pertaining to having my money safeguarded in case I was out of work. I didn't have my resume up to date if I needed to send it out immediately to people to start to create network. I really didn't have a network at that point in time. I was, again, didn't reluctant to ask for help, didn't necessarily have a lot of friends and professional friends, especially. We tend to have friends that are like family, cousins, neighbors. We never have professional networks, especially in the minority community. So I
Mm.
didn't have any real strong networks to reach out to. So I was blindsided and I had nothing. So I always tell people, yes, stay focused on what you're doing, but please have your mind open and your ears open to other things happening that may not affect you directly today, but there may be some residual that ends up coming around that does affect you. And that
Mhm.
happened to me just 3 weeks ago, going on 1 month almost. I had seen similar signs at my current company. I had finally found another job in 2017, late 2017, and last year started to see some shifts in the organization, shifts in structure, started to see a series of movement. And I said, I'm not going to let the same thing happen to me again. So I started working on getting my resume together, enlisted an executive coach to help me understand what is the environment today for looking for a job. I'm at an executive level vice presidency now. Those jobs are very hard to come by. Lots of people looking, not many things available. How do I get prepared? How do I make sure my money, I haven't been doing a whole lot of spending, luckily for COVID, haven't done a whole lot. My financially, I was secure just in case I may find myself out of work. And on March 7th, I came into the office and they let me know that I was part of the next set of layoffs occurring on that day. But
Mm,
this time I was ready. That's
you're
why you see me
ready.
glowing. I'm
Yes.
glowing because even though I'm technically unemployed, I feel so much better about myself and where I am in my brand than I did in 2017 when I got there.
Mm.
So I say to people, don't dismiss the hidden clues or the clues that you don't think pertain to you today, but always be ready just in case.
Yes, I'm so glad you shared this story with us. It's so relatable. And what I want to emphasize for people watching this and listening to this is that these types of layoffs are happening. And I'm noticing even the best people, the highest caliber of leader, employee, professional, whatever position you're in, are at risk because especially because some of these are just big swooping like whole divisions or whole functions or
Right.
whole like big shakeups, right? And so the thing I would love to hear from you, in addition to all those things you mentioned, preparing yourself, being ready, knowing that it's possible to come in and positioning yourself and your brand, how do we deal with our ego hit when something like that happens? It does not, even though in our mind we know this isn't about me, it does feel that way. How did you navigate that emotionally?
Well, you're right. It is an ego. And similarly, I'm like, well, did they get rid of me? Same thing. I would say overexposed. I was everywhere in the organization. I was helping this team, that team, working with our employee resource groups, doing some training. I was everywhere. I had the same thought in my mind in that after all this time, you couldn't figure something else out for me. From an ego perspective, yes, I'm hurt. But I knew it was time for something else. And a lot of times it's hindsight's 2020.
Definitely.
There was so many things I had been thinking about for myself pertaining to my next between my books, my speaking, my coaching, my working with other groups to allow them to thrive in corporate. I said to myself, you know what? The company doesn't define me. And we do
Mm,
take it personally to say, well, how dare they let me go? But I made sure that I aligned myself to who I am, what I bring to the table. And sometimes we need reminders. And it was wonderful that people reached out to me when they heard that I got let go to help me affirm my value, to
mhm,
remind me, hey, you know what? There's a lot of things that you delivered to us and for us that they can't take away from you. You have helped me, or you empowered me, or I moved to this position because you helped me. So it's the validation of your legacy is what your ego should sit on, not sitting on the fact that you're no longer there. It really is about what you left behind and those people who will continue to be motivated by whatever it was that you said, did,
mm.
helped them, connected them to, allowed them to do and meet and be. That for me fed my ego more so than the fact that I am no longer working for that company.
Yeah, I was letting that soak in because it's so critical. And one of the things that's and you said hindsight is 2020, and it's so true. But when we look back at a door closing, it is often, very often, a blessing in disguise. And there's another door that's going to open up for you that's even bigger, even more aligned with where you want to be now versus where you were when you came into this position. You might have outgrown it. And now it's time for that next chapter, and you need a little push out the door and into that next phase. And so, in the moment, it is very hard to see it that way. But when we take the time to let it go, to soak up the love and support from others, and then look back and think, you know what? Now I have an open blank sheet of paper, or maybe you have a plan. What would I love to do next? What would be really great for me? What have I been wanting to do that this position has held me back from getting started on? And there's so much opportunity there for people to consider when that happens. Well, I'm
Absolutely.
loving this whole conversation, Dr. E. I'm going to start to wrap this up a bit, and I'd love to hear any additional advice you might have for women listening who are just navigating their careers, looking to do it with more ease, purpose, and confidence.
Great, thank you. I have a framework that I call the YUPS, YUPS, because what we all talk about is not new, it's not rocket science, it's similar pieces of life that we probably have heard, recognized, ignored, tried, didn't work, or just waiting to do. And the three pieces of my YUPS is one, set up. And that really is about your mindset. How do we shift ourselves from what we probably have imposter syndrome? We are probably carrying some baggage mentally from prior jobs. So we really have to think about how do we shed all that and understand what our core values are and make sure we're living in those values. The second piece is show up. And that really is, as we discussed earlier, leaning into areas that are unknown to you, unfamiliar, being brave. I remember there was a meeting I went to. I was afraid to get out of my car because I was afraid of talking. I'm an introvert. Even though you may not be able to tell that. It's a lot of work for me to talk to people and really walk into rooms where I don't know anybody,
Hmm.
but I know it's so important, and I have kind of a mantra I go through before I walk in so that I feel comfortable knowing that I'm uncomfortable. And the last piece is step up. Because once you've changed your mindset, once you're showing up in areas where now people are getting to know who you are, you're no longer the new person, no longer an outsider. Now you can step up and really be the true leader that you are and speak confidently. Let people know exactly what you bring to the table. We are often judged well before we open our mouths. And I always
Hmm.
say, so when you do, it better be good, but you have to work at that. So that's my YUPS framework. And I love talking to people about where they are in that space and providing them information and tools to allow them to get to that next layer. And so many have been benefited from my toolkit that I'm so excited. I love talking to people about it.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And if you could share with everybody the free gift you have for them today.
Yes, it's called the Elevate Your Value Checklist. And what it does is based on those three areas of my framework, it asks a series of questions for you to just check to see if you are or are not performing some of these activities that would allow you to thrive in corporate. And I give a little bit of insight around what you could be doing differently if you're not doing these items today. So I'd love for you all to be able to go out and get that free gift, your Elevate Your Value checklist.
Great. I hope everybody checks it out. And I just want to thank you for your time, Dr. E, for your vulnerability in sharing some of your stories. I am sure somebody needed to hear it today.
Thank,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you for having me.